The Tekken story has been celebrated for its many achievements, from the sheer length of its 30-year runtime, to the ambitious scenario campaign of Tekken 6, to the now cinematically expansive narrative of Tekken 8. For any of you that don't know the story leading up to this point, I'll give a quick summary of each of the games. Tekken 1 and 2 storylines are bound to each other as the narrative starts with Heihachi Mishima, chief patriarch of the Mishima family, throwing his son Kazuya off a cliff into a volcano. At the brink of death, Kazuya makes a deal with the devil and re-emerged as Devil Kazuya, who serves as the main antagonist of Tekken 2. Prior to being incinerated in a volcano, Kazuya meets Jun Kazama, where he later has Jun Kazama. Of course, Kazuya abandons them, as any father would, and the story follows Jin as he learns martial arts from his mother Jun and his grandfather Heihachi in Tekken 3. Unfortunately, Jun Kazama is kidnapped by an intergalactic martial arts alien, leaving Jun Kazama destitute and alone. 2 years later, in Tekken 4, Kazuya Mishima is resurrected for the second time by G Corporation. Kazuya goes on to beat the shit out of Heihachi, so in Tekken 5, Heihachi is absent, while his father Jinpachi joins the story. Nothing much to comment on here, other than he was killed by Heihachi for seemingly no reason and then buried under an estate. He ends up getting possessed by an evil spirit, but is ultimately defeated by Jun Kazama at the end of Tekken 5. Tekken 6 is when it really starts to fall apart. It follows new characters Lars Alexanderson and Alisa Boskonovich. Jin now owns the Mishima Zaibatsu, $1 million family business, and is starting his regime to stomp out the devil gene. What is the devil gene? It's a genetic predisposition to become the devil in seemingly difficult or trying times. Hosts often have a lot of internal conflict and may find the devil to be an uncontrollable evil, or the perfect catalyst to impose their rule. So not only does this retcon Tekken 2's deal with the devil setup, but it now gives Jin Kazama the devil gene, as it's a genetic and hereditary trait. Anyways, Jin is now on a warpath to create the worst conditions globally so that he can bring out the original origin of the devil gene, in the same way that internal conflict causes the devil gene to express itself. Interesting concept and setup, but he is just murdering people, blowing up entire cities, and threatening people. Lars, originally a part of the Zaibatsu's army, now leads a revolt against Jin's all-out war crime, placing him and Jin as the protagonist and antagonist respectively. You find out that the guy who is the main character, can control lightning, and has spiky hair is actually a Mishima. No way. This uncovers the fact that Heihachi has upwards of 20 children that the audience has not been aware of. Amazing writing. Tekken 7 attempts to clarify some of the batshit insane decisions Heihachi Mishima has made. We learn of Jinpachi's martial arts prowess and the fact that Heihachi did kill him. There's no reason given for this. It's definitely not because he thought that he hosted the devil gene because of things that we learn later in the story. The game focuses around Kazuya's mother, Kazumi. Kazumi Hachijo was Heihachi's wife before an untimely death during Kazuya's youth. Once again, Heihachi is the reason that she dies. Honestly, I would take time to explain this incredibly convoluted storyline, but I think I could describe it in one word. Stupid. None of the things that Heihachi or Kazumi does makes any sense. And while the game does try to give you a more sympathetic look at Heihachi, he still comes across as an unabashed, chronic homicider. The devil gene gets retconned again as we learn that it's actually from a clan of assassins that belong to Kazumi. Heihachi loses in the final battle against Akuma Kazuya, which leads us into Tekken 8. Tekken 8 comes as the fighter's newest installment, slightly after the events of Tekken 7, still following the Mishima bloodline. If I'm being honest, I haven't cared much for the main storyline. I've always been more intrigued in the side characters' narratives, but Tekken 8 has been frequently marketed as the end of the Mishima saga, so my expectations are high. We've been following this story for like 30 years. I think the main characters haven't caught my attention because most of the Kazamas and Mishimas are boring caricatures with piss-poor motivations. Kazuya is a generic evil guy that literally says stuff like pitiful and shameful. Like, why does Heihachi do any of the things that he does? And Jin Kazama's characterization has always been one of a damp paper bag, which has been fine for most of the story since it's been focused on his father and late grandfather's conflict. But now he occupies center stage after causing World War III, seemingly for no reason 2 games ago. Regardless, Jin mains and normal people alike were excited to see where the story of Tekken 8 would take him and the rest of the cast. The chapter opens on Jin and Kazuya engaged in an all-out brawl, desecrating New York 6 months after the events of Tekken 7. Kazuya, logically, pauses to take the time to bully Jin about his world war in Tekken 6. Jin's response is,
She's got a point.
setting up the main plot drivers for the remainder of the story. In the next scene, we see Raven and the Phantom Raven, Victor Chevalier, discussing the effects of Jin and Kazuya's bout. According to Bamco, Victor Chevalier, the living legend, founded the UN's independent forces. Victor earns himself the codename Phantom Raven and is looked upon with both fear and awe by others in the military. Soon, though, he begins to sense that the world is back on the brink of being overtaken by a corporate giant. In response, he starts securing the means needed to counter the corporation's private armed forces. He directs the Raven unit, an elite team trained by himself, and This excerpt positions G-Corp and Victor as direct opposition, so you'd expect Victor, especially as a new character, to play a big role in the narrative. Let's see what they do with him. Back to the story, Devil Kazuya shoots a Devil Space Laser into space, sending a broadcast across the world to warn fighters of the impending 8th King of Iron Fist tournament. It's a pretty awesome opening sequence, I have to admit. Following the events of Chapter 1, Jin is recovering with Lars and Lee in the Rebel hangar, which is interesting considering all of their relationships in Tekken 6. Lee reveals that Jin's, quote, aptitude has diminished,
whatever that means,
prompting Lars to ask Jin to transform into Devil Jin. He tries, he fails, and he continues training well into the night. Elisa flies to him for aid and calls him everyone's hope. Jin then meets with Lars, Lee, and Elisa in the cockpit of the jet and announces his entrance into the tournament, with the explicit plan of trying to unlock his Devil Gene. And that's Chapter 2. Honestly, it's fine. We're still in the exposition part of the story. The only egregious thing was Jin's war crimes being ignored, but we'll frequently revisit this retcon, like the whole time. The whole story is kind of a retcon. Paul and Law when will enough be enough? Paul and Law play fight in the qualifying tournament for North America, and Paul wins, advancing him into the next round. All the qualifiers are announced, starting with Emily de Rochefort from Monaco, Azucena Ortiz from Peru, Leroy Smith from the United States, and Paul Phoenix from the United States. Kazuya says some evil stuff about how he's going to destroy the world, and we see Jin walking in the backstage of the arena. Reina greets him a little too cheerfully, and Jin walks her. Alright, let's read her character excerpt. Meet Reina, the mysterious fighter who uses lightning-quick moves to overwhelm anyone who dares face her. Other than the fact that she is a student of the Mishima Polytechnic School, everything about her is shrouded in mystery. I wonder if there's supposed to be genuine intrigue about the origins of this character. Her alias is Purple Lightning, and she does electrics. She puts the Mishima style on Jin, so her ties to Heihachi feel clear, which makes her reveal in the final act of the story feel unearned. But I hope they do something with her other than that. How in Jin fight in the finals, Jin beats up his boyfriend and unlocks his Devil Gene, however only momentarily. Chapter 4 starts with Nina Williams, renowned loser and worst assassin in the fucking world, meeting with Kazuya to discuss the ongoings of Claudio and Zafina. As Ling is celebrating with Panda about Jin's win, Claudio and Zafina are seen brooding about Kazuya's power. Reina recounts her conversation with Jin, where she lies to him about the origins of her fighting style. Okay, time for one of the worst scenes in the story. Everybody take a deep breath. Leo and their entourage walk into the sparring area where Jin is. They spar, and after Leo says, "I did feel something though, a warmth." Leo, holding Jin's hand, waxes poetic about how amazing and awesome he is, and I'll speak a few times about the several character assassinations that happen in order for the plot to rally around Jun Kazama. Like, truly, we will have a separate section to talk about that, because it is one of the biggest issues plaguing the story. Okay, Heihachi Mishima is dead, whatever. Chapter 5. We begin in Italy for the King of Iron Fist tournament as Asuka and Lily are having a conversation about, basically nothing. Hao is also there. Some aforementioned contenders like Paul, Jin, and Azucena duke it out, and the arc of the tournament that began 1 sentence ago in this script is now over. Lars, Victor, and the UN broadly start invading the Coliseum. Oh, I forgot though. While Victor is preparing his raid, Leroy and Jin have a conversation. It's just another conversation where someone says, "Jin, you can do it." After Jin beats the shit out of Leroy, Kazuya walks onto the balcony to be evil. Outside of the Coliseum, Lee, Lars, and Victor strategize their entrance. Also, am I crazy or is Lars's head fucking tiny? As they make their casual, covert, and non-alarming way in, Kazuya grimaces on his throne. He flies over the arena, jumping Claudio, Zafina, and Ling, teleporting into the sky with Zafina and summoning the origin of the devil and the Devil Gene back into reality. He then tosses Zafina off to the side and she's dead. Alright, if it seemed like a lot just happened, yes, all of this happens 50 seconds in game time. This actually genuinely gave me whiplash the first time that I watched it, because there are so many pacing issues in this game, it's crazy. Anyways, as Zafina is dying in Jiayu's arms, Lily is in the center of the shot for some reason. Less than 4 seconds after Zafina dies, the next line of dialogue is,
Tu as mentionné Yakushima tout à l'heure. Si tu t'y rends, je vais faire préparer le jet.
What the fuck is going on with the tone? And why is Lily the character that gets the next piece of dialogue after Zafina dies? Jin then stares at his fist for what feels like the 8th time, Kazuya summons the devil, and we then fight the boss of Tekken 6, with a very cool fight and very cool art direction, may I say. Kazuya becomes like the super devil or whatever, because he beat Azazel in less than a chapter. As Jin is leaving for Yakushima, everyone tells him that he's awesome again, which, thank you guys, I did almost forget. He does kind of just like awkwardly leave in the middle of the fight while Kazuya is super powered up. So everyone else preps for what looks like the final battle of their lives, and oh, they lose him bad. Except for Reina, who somehow has the strength of 7 people and she's able to fight true Devil Kazuya by herself. Alright. But she does get some help at the end of the fight after beating Kazuya's ass multiple times. Claudio summons his power into a spirit arrow, and he shoots that shit at Kazuya. Kazuya slightly moves his shoulder to the right and dodges the entire shot, shooting a laser and incinerating Claudio. Claudio ultimately does hit Kazuya as he can steer his arrow. Alright. And the chapter ends on a shot of the hot, steamy hole that Claudio's dead body is in. I have a few questions personally, like what the fuck just happened? Where is Leroy, or Steve, or King? Like, why is Lily the only contestant that's there out of all of the tournament fights? They all just disappear out of thin air. How was Kazuya able to move from his throne to the entrance of the Coliseum that quickly? How did Reina fight Kazuya at all without insta-dying? How did you just kill 2 characters, the only characters in the story with the ability to get rid of or dull the devil gene? Don't worry, I think everything's going to be answered in Chapter 8. Leo's dad, Nicholas, tells Team Jin about the newly absorbed devil powers Kazuya has. Another terrible scene, characters Asuka Kazama, Ling Xiaoyu, Lily Rochford, Panda, and Jin Kazama are sitting on Lily's private jet on their way to the aforementioned Yakushima. Lily, out of all characters, pulls up Jin's family tree, and Asuka's the first to comment on it, saying, I feel like if you're watching this video, I don't even need to say what's wrong with this scene, but please allow me. Lily explains to Asuka Kazama the Kazama tree. In Tekken 5, Asuka joins the tournament because Fang hospitalized her father, who is Jin's uncle and Jun's brother. How the fuck does she not know them? This was their opportunity to address this, considering the fact that the writers and the devs have dropped the ball so many times. And they doubled down. They doubled down on their poor writing by having Asuka be the person to ask this stupid fucking question. People have said before that Jin and Asuka aren't related, but they're just from the same clan, and that being the reason why they share the same surname. But like, please be serious. Half of the roster is Japanese. Why would they give them the same surname and the same fighting style if they weren't related? Especially after they sent the precedent of Jin and Jun being related, having the same last name and a similar fighting style. Just as Kazuya and Heihachi are related, have the same last name and a similar fighting style. I could go on and on about how bad the writing in this scene is, but let's just continue. Ling, Jin, and Panda arrive at Yakushima, and Jin smiles for what feels like the first time in 27 years. While sparring, Jin hears a faint song coming from a nearby cave, and he stumbles towards it in a trance-like state. After, Jin becomes weak and falls asleep inside of the cave. Outside, Ling hears the entrance of Jack 8 bots as they've come in to abduct Jin. Chapter 9 starts with Lee detailing the plans of G-Corp to Team Jin. Here, Steve, Harong, Leo, King, Paul, and Kuma join the team. They only show their feet, like we don't know what their character designs look like, but whatever. Also, Kuma and Paul are standing next to each other despite being mortal enemies for several decades. We meet back up with Ling to see her still fighting Jack 8. She's beat 4 and baby, she's tired. She's literally gasping for air as 5 more arrive. At the same time, we see Jin wake up in his dream state. At this point, we're only getting establishing shots, so we'll come back to this. In Chapter 10, Team Jin arrives on the battlefield. Leo jumps off a fucking motorcycle and kills some military guy. They end up encountering Azucena, and this is the only scene where we really get Azucena's characterization. Leo says,
Du bist doch Azucena von der Ortiz Farm. Stehst du jetzt auf der Seite der G Corporation?
And Azucena responds,
Si estás con la corporación G, será una excelente publicidad para mi café. Además, ¿no crees que el café ayudará a alcanzar la paz mundial?
It is so hard to understand if she's being serious because she's talking about the company that got outed for having the literal devil as their CEO in the previous game. The fact that this is the only thing that Azucena says throughout the entire story mode makes her come across as such a dumb, idiotic, not only character but like person. Okay, a few other interactions happen and I'm gonna run through them quickly. Law and Paul. Law is mad at Paul because he lied about giving Law a portion of the tournament prize. They fight. Kuma, just now, on an active battlefield, decides to attack Paul and a rocket blows him up. Boom. 4 of the weirdest characters to have together are talking behind a low texture boulder. This leads into a conflict between Victor and Dragunov. Leroy and Fang say vague platitudes before fighting, where it ultimately leads to a draw. Nina slowly strolls through an open battlefield and takes a phone call on her tablet-sized phone. Reina lurks behind her before they fight. After, Nina does a backflip for some reason and then shoots at Reina from like 15 feet away, and Reina kind of just punches it. Nina quits her job and she walks away. I don't really know what the fuck is going on at this point. Characters are just kind of doing things because the plot needs them to be in certain places and the writers don't know how to get them there. They want Nina to no longer interfere with the story, so just make her quit her job in the middle of a fight for no reason. Elisa takes on a lone Jack 8 and struggles. Despite Ling being able to beat at least 10 Jack 7s on her own, that's besides the point. Asuka and Lily drop from her private plane onto the Jack 8's heads. You know, when you really read the choreography out loud, it can really just expose how bad it is. Kazuya appears and starts doing mass and indiscriminate genocide. Reina walks in front of one of those projectiles that Kazuya is firing and we get the infamous shot. This all happens before Kazuya has a premonition about where Jin is or something, as we get the stinger of the Devil Gene awakening in Reina. So this is like retcon number like 3 or 4 of how the Devil Gene works at this point. I'm losing count. Beautiful Chapter 11. Lars joins Ling in her fight against the horde of Jacks. Kazuya appears and Lars and him fight. Lars fake dies and then has a Heihachi moment, and that's pretty much all of Chapter 11. We cut back to Jin in his dreamscape in Chapter 12. He sees Jun just like taking a nap on the floor, and he starts hearing Devil Jin's voice echo in the background. He starts tormenting him and we get these really cool shots of Devil Jin taking up the entire back or foreground, and his model looks really good. This is where we also get the reveal that Devil Jin was the original figure that reached out to him in the trailer and in Chapter 1. After a brief fight, Devil Jin takes him down to his lair. Remember in Tekken 6 when Jin was ambivalently sitting on his perch while he led the only force causing World War III? This whole time, Devil Jin is arguing that Jin is a fundamentally evil person and a problem to the people in his life, so he must live in solitude. I mean, we're supposed to feel bad for him, but Devil Jin is just kinda right. He, of course, is wrong about the solution of Jin isolating himself, but he's kind of right in all other regards. Like, what altruistic thing has Jin ever done? He's always been a lone wolf, and when people are in his space, he's either cold to them or actively hostile. I get that this is supposed to be him addressing that aspect of himself that wants to push people away, which is Devil Jin. But this conflict has been going on for 28 years, and Jin has never shown a humanitarian bone in his body. So it's like weird that we're expected to characterize him as that and then argue for him under those pretenses. Anyways, after each fight, Devil Jin farts on him and takes him to a deeper part of his subconscious. We're now in the lowest floor. Here, he meets a clone of himself, and this is where he wants to, quote, take ownership over his past. This shit is real rich. It's been 2 games since we were introduced to Miguel, whose entire purpose was to kill Jin after he indiscriminately murdered his sister. The entire cast of the game of Tekken 6 was motivated against Jin. The main character was directly opposed to Jin. Now, insularly, in his mind alone, he gets to take accountability. Only to himself and not to the other people who were affected by his actions. They fight, but he's like Devil Jin or something to unify the two wolves inside of him. He becomes half angel, half devil. As to how he could do this, I don't fucking know, but he then leaves to reunite with Xiaoyu. In chapter 13, Kazuya and Lars are on round 8, blasting and busting all over each other, and Jin saves Lars from Kazuya's last laser. Again, power scaling. How can Kazuya's lasers destroy military equipment from 100 feet away like tanks, but can't kill a single human being standing directly in front of him? Jin actually apologizes to Lars, which is good writing, and Lars immediately forgives him, which is bad writing. Like, this is not the same person that led an entire revolt and regime against Jun Kazama 2 fucking years ago in game. There's no way. Didn't his best friend die because of Jin and the war? Like, am I hallucinating? Ling walks over to Jin and says blah 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 blah, and Jin once again doesn't respond and walks away from her. Jin leaves to go blast his dad's ass, and this entire fight, this whole fight, feels like a reference to the older Tekken movies, like circa Tekken Tag 2. They're flying through the air and their bodies are made out of jelly and they never die and they can destroy anything. It's pretty awesome. Kazuya summons a spirit bomb, which is new, and he throws it at Jin. Jin is like, don't dare. While he's holding the spirit bomb, he gets bored, so he starts thinking about his mom. Now I could sit here and waste everybody's time by recounting the conversation that they have, the conversation that has had 20 years of build-up behind it, but honestly it's inconsequential and boring. They both just whisper niceties at each other. Jin, you're awesome. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Oh my god. Also, this happens. Jin throws that shit into the ocean. Millions of animals and organisms dead. They fight, but now Jin has the power of purification. Dude, the magic system in this game is so fucked. Chapter 14. Okay, a little update. In the last 8 seconds of the previous chapter, Jin threw the bomb into the ocean. You remember that? That causes a ripple which pushes molten rock up from the bottom of the earth, which pushes them towards the sky, and they're in space. We're in space now. They fight to the point that ultimately their respective angel and devil powers cancel out. This causes an energy blast that makes them now fall from space. Okay, chapter 15, the final chapter. Jin in those Timmy Tim Tims and Kazuya in them damn work pants face off for their final battle. It's quite the spectacle as Jin cycles through different variations of himself embodied through his fighting stance. As a Tekken nerd, it was very satiating to see him fight with Jun Kazama's fighting style. It ultimately concludes with 2 endings. One with Jin as a victor and one with Kazuya as a victor. I think it's safe to say that Jin's ending is the canon one. Kazuya is left alive but unconscious as Xiaoyu and Jin ride off into the sunset. Okay, and that's all of the main story. I have some thoughts of immediately after I played the story expansion, which I'm going to play now. Okay, I just finished playing the story mode expansion, and oh my fucking god. First off, nothing happened. It is an hour and 30 minutes and nothing fucking happened. Literally all that happens is Eddie has an interaction with Jin. Eddie's mad at Jin. They fight and then Eddie goes, I'm not mad anymore. Okay, what the fuck? Jin apologizes anyways, which is good, but why is he not mad immediately after fighting him? Eddie fights Nina. Nina is the worst assassin on the fucking planet. Then like Liddy, Eddie, and Yoshi, I still don't understand why it's these 3 characters in specific, but they go to the island or wherever the fuck Heihachi's staying, and you meet all the people that have been training with Heihachi for the past 6 months since he died, and you find out that he didn't die. Literally somebody was just at the bottom of a fucking volcano and caught him when he was falling, and so he's fine. And they're like, okay, you have to go and split a meteor open so that you can pass your challenges to align your mind, body, and soul. Okay, what the fuck ever. So he goes to go and do this stupid shit, which, how the fuck did they know that a meteor was gonna fall? Because the reason that it fell was because of Jin and Kazuya. So how the fuck did they know a meteor was gonna fall? Because that was not a natural event that occurred. Like, that only happened because they were fighting. And they started fighting, like, they were up there for literally like 15 minutes. They were up there for one story chapter that I summarized in 3 sentences. Okay, whatever. The fucking meteor falls. Heihachi splits it with his head, and then he gets his memories back. This is fucking weird because he literally fights a shadow version of himself and he doesn't give a fuck. Like, he's able to maintain the new nice version of Heihachi. So I don't know why that was a thing that made him snap. But he snaps, he goes back and he kills everybody in the village. Eddie and Lydia and Yoshimitsu, I guess, are fucking sleeping when this is happening. And they figure out, they walk over there while Lydia's training and they figure out, like, oh my god, Heihachi's back, he killed all these people. And they all fight him. Heihachi throws Eddie into a fucking statue that is like 500 feet away in the distance. Eddie's dead as fuck. He kills all of them, which I'm just gonna say he kills all of them, even though I know they're gonna appear in Tekken 9 with no fucking scratches on their body, even though they all got beat the fuck out of. So everything's fine, and then Heihachi goes, I'm gonna make sure Kazuya gets what he deserves, and then it ends. You could have done all that shit in 30 minutes and wrapped that hoe the fuck up nice, neat, and tight. But the real thing that got on my nerves was the stuff that you find out after unlocking this. Oh my fucking god. Okay, you get a little short story of Leo finding their dad. That's all fine and good, and it's dumb, but it's good and it's sweet, and I'm glad Leo players got that. You also get this little entry, this little small little entry that reveals that Zafina is a fucking Kazama. Like, okay, so she's related to Jun and Asuka and Jin. Why? Okay, I'm just gonna read the couple of sentences just so that we're on the same page. The Kazama clan has resided in Yakushima for over 1,000 years, descending from the same ancestral roots as Zafina, who sealed Azazel away. Members of the Kazama clan possess remarkable spiritual abilities and the sacred power that flow. Who gives a fuck? Why can Zafina tap into her powers more than fucking Asuka can? What the fuck ever. The other thing I want to focus on is Jun's journal entries. We get these after you unlock the after you finish the stupid story mode. Really, the only thing I want to focus on is that we figure out why she originally even speaks to Kazuya at all. And the reason is kind of dumb, but it's fine. It's that she has these magical healing powers and all this bullshit, and so she's always felt isolated from other people because she's so special and awesome. And Kazuya has the same thing, but he's like literally the devil, and he's separated from people, and they're both drawn to each other because I guess Jun is so good and moral and virtuistic and awesome, and Kazuya is so the opposite that people don't want to hang out with either of them, so they're drawn to each other. Whatever, that's fine. Like, I guess if you need a reason. So they end up having Jin, but before they have Jin, the devil starts appearing to Jun to corrupt Jin, I guess. And Jun's only way to fight back against this is to become Angel Jun. There is a fucking picture of Jun with fucking angel wings in this game. I'm going to rip my fucking hair out. Dude, the amount of times that they've retconned shit, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay, so I guess that's how we got Angel Jin. There's our answer for how we got Angel Jin, is that Jun is Angel. Jun is Angel. Who the fuck was Angel in Tekken 2? I don't know who that blonde white woman was, but it was somebody. It was fucking somebody. It's okay. You know what? It's okay. In a year, they're going to release another expansion that doesn't answer any of the questions. It takes 2 hours to finish as well. I feel like there's more. But all of that happened in the time when Kazuya was getting his ass beat, and now he's like incapacitated when Heihachi comes back. So I guess that's why they don't say anything in their opening lines against each other, because they haven't met yet, canonically. I just am in disbelief at the quality of this fucking story mode, dude. Yeah, let's just go back to the video. Okay, I'm back. It's been a few days. I've had some time to process the trauma. I wrote down a couple notes. We're just gonna read them and discuss, like a therapy session, if you will. Why do Eddie, Yoshi, and Lydia trust Heihachi at all? Especially Yoshi and Eddie. With the amount of time that they've spent with this character, and they've seen the fucked up shit that they've done, Eddie literally worked for Jin. Like, he's been involved directly with this family and Kazuya. Honestly, the entire DLC story falls apart when you ask yourself that question. Like, it makes no sense for these characters to be in the position that they're in. It was good to see Jin and Eddie take accountability for their actions as they both played a part in the war, but I would have liked for Eddie to have been more angry at Jin instead of just blaming himself. Jin had leverage to get Eddie to work for him, so it's odd that Eddie immediately drops it within 30 seconds of bringing it up. The Mishima fighting style was retconned again, awesome. Where have the Tekken monks been this entire time? Like, they're named after the game. You'd think it would be pretty important to the narrative. It seems like all of, if not most of Tekken 7 has been retconned at this point, because somehow Heihachi lived. Even though Kazuya was staring at him hit the lava, and the way that he survives is just insane. Why was there someone at the bottom of a fucking volcano? Why was he inside of a volcano? Why did he catch Heihachi even though Heihachi's like evil and horrible and a piece of shit? How did Heihachi lose all of his memory from this point? Like, all that happened was that he got knocked out. All of these answers can be found by just realizing that the writers have written themselves into yet another corner. Heihachi's characterization remains boring as fuck since he's just evil with no actual motivations. He just becomes evil after he splits that asteroid open, and it's so fucking boring. It doesn't make sense that he's able to fight like an evil demonic version of himself and he's unfazed, don't care. But splitting the asteroid open was what caused that to happen. Also, how did they know that that asteroid was gonna fall? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Where did any of those other asteroids go? Like, what the fuck? Heihachi goes back and he kills everyone in the village, and it honestly feels the same as Sindel killing half of the cast in Mortal Kombat 9 and in Mortal Kombat 11. It just doesn't make any sense, and they completely get rid of power scaling just so that they can have their character do something dramatic. But like, actually, how did he kill every single person in there? Like, did they all individually walk up to him and fight him 1v1 like how Eddie, Yoshi, and Lydia did? Honestly, with how much I'm complaining, nothing fucking happens for the hour-and-a-half runtime of the story DLC. Heihachi does not interact with Jin, Kazuya, Lars, Jun, or Reina. Like, what are we doing? We do, however, learn the origins of Reina through additional text content provided in the expansion. It turns out that Reina is a Hachijo instead of a Mishima, which is why she has a double form. Heihachi kidnapped her as the lone survivor of the Hachijo clan after he genocided them after he killed Kazumi. So now we're just learning that he's just killing more and more innocent people that have nothing to fucking do with him. Honestly, he had quite the battle with Kazumi in Tekken 7. So how was he able to kill an entire clan of just Devil Gene havers? And it's like, after he killed Kazumi and the entire clan of people with the Devil Gene, he's still struggling to just kill Kazuya and Jin, who don't have any formal training with the Devil Gene, don't live in a culture or society where the Devil Gene is encouraged to be interacted with. They don't know how to use it for fighting in any other way than their intuition, like how Kazumi and all of her clan would have had. Yet, Heihachi killed all... Okay, but Reina being a Hachijo means a few things. A, how is Reina a student at Mishima Polytechnic if she's the same age as Kazuya? She's like in her 40s. Also, where was she for any of the other games? If she's not a Mishima either, how the fuck can she generate lightning? I guess they can generate lightning because they retconned the Mishima fighting style, right? Wouldn't Heihachi have been busy raising his teenage daughter from Tekken 1 to like 5? Why is Reina even loyal to Heihachi at all? None of this makes any sense, and I just fucking played the game for an hour and a half, and these are where these questions could have been answered. I gave more of a fuck about these things than the fucking Tekken monks. Also, if there's Angel Jun, who the fuck is this white woman from Tekken 2, bruh? I think that they're going to continue to add DLCs since they want this game to go on for about 10 years or so. I imagine that the rest of them will be setting up Tekken 9's conflict, which will probably be between Jin, Jun, Kazuya, Heihachi, and Reina as the main players. Allegiances may be mixed, so it could be like Kazuya, Heihachi, and Reina working together, or Jun, Jin, and Kazuya. I don't know. They all hate each other, and the alliances are constantly flipping and swapping around. Okay, I want to start off with things that I like. Positivity. Chapters 1 through 4 were great. They set up the narrative in a way that is so easy to understand with or without prior knowledge of the story. The presentation throughout remains beautiful, from great transitions to amazing set and sound design. The story displays Tekken 8's truly high digital fidelity. The final chapter is also amazing. I already gushed about the use of previous story beats in the final chapter. Tekken always does an amazing job with its last fights. Lastly, I love the use of side characters this time. Even if their role is minimal or kind of stupid, at least every character is seen and gets used in the story. This is a stark contrast to Tekken 7, which was entirely focused on the Mishimas and their entourage. Okay, remember when I said we would come back to Elisa's everyone's hope comment in Chapter 2? Tekken 7 happens immediately after Tekken 6, and Tekken 8 happens 6 months after Tekken 7. So in-game, it's been about a year and a half since the events of Tekken 6, when Jin started World War III and murdered several characters that had ties to base roster characters. It's been less than 18 months since Jin murdered Miguel's sister on her wedding day. It's been less than 18 months since Jin used Elisa's programming against Lars. It's been less than 18 months since Jin was literally dropping bombs across the globe. And several characters throughout the story, not just Elisa, immediately forgive him like he wasn't creating refugee crises in first and third world countries alike. Leo, for example, has a million reasons to hate Jin, since Leo's mom worked for Jin and Kazuya before she was assassinated just before the World War that happens in Tekken 6. But after they fight, Leo goes, "Oh, there's no evil in you," and then joins Jin to fight against Kazuya, which is funny because he hadn't even expunged the devil from himself yet, so like, what are you talking about? There clearly is still evil within him. That's the point of the whole story. It's one thing to forgive someone that was connected to your mother's murder. It's another thing to actively help them 6 months after they did World War III. Lily, prior to the events of Tekken 8, also hated Jin since Jin Zaibatsu took over oil fields that were for her father's company, leading to her father becoming chronically ill. She gives him the first-class treatment with a private plane. And Lars might be the worst example, because he was the main character of Tekken 6, and Jin was the main antagonist. It's so crazy to me to befriend someone that started a world war you were the main rebellion against, to befriend someone that weaponized your best friend against you, and did nothing to make that up to you personally. It doesn't make any sense, and it highlights how inconsistent and unclear character motivations are. There are several characters that act completely out of character, do things that make no sense, or actively against their previous motivations, which makes the narrative unbelievable. Why does Nina help Jin in Tekken 6, help Heihachi in Tekken 7 despite him trying to kill Jin and Kazuya, and then work for Kazuya in Tekken 8? I know the excuse that has been used is that Nina goes wherever the money is, but A, this is like lazy writing, and B, the Mishimas themselves should have an issue with this. They're all in the same family and share wealth through a shared family business, and none of y'all notice that your secretary is hopping around. Nina is just one example, but this applies to every character that isn't a Mishima. They all just do stuff because the plot needs them to. Azucena is evil and works for Kazuya. Why? She's stupid. Asuka doesn't know who Jun or Jin is, despite her reason for joining the tournament being her dad, who is Jin's uncle and Jun's brother. Why? The writers are fucking stupid. Similarly to the previous section, there are characters that don't do anything in the story, like anything. Despite physically being there, characters like Steve or King don't do much, which is disappointing because this is the 8th game. Most of these characters have complex ties in the story now. Steve could have confronted Nina. Shikine, since he's friends with Lily, could have been her bodyguard and accompanied Jin and Xiaoyu to Yakushima, which would have actually made more sense than Shikine is looking for revenge on Kazuya. Raven could have been made more useful instead of just being wrong about Heihachi's death for the 2nd time. There are so many lost opportunities and character moments that we could have had, but we don't get. Boring. I think it's pretty bad that the 2 characters that this entire story revolves around are the least intriguing. Kazuya's story is about the cycle of abuse. How an unseeming boy can turn into a monster, into the devil incarnate after abuse, and how he can inadvertently pass that on to other people in his life. However, now he's just evil. Like, just evil, no nuance. All his lines are so fucking corny and unoriginal. And it pisses me off. Kazuya has never been my cup of tea, obviously, look at this whole channel. But I will say that previously, his story was interesting. Like, I think Tekken 5 was like when he became almost like a joke character of himself. And it's unfortunate to see. His story was really interesting when you understood it from that perspective. And I don't know, it feels like his character is just a little bit lost in the sauce. The anime sauce. Jin is also a shell of his former self. I have a less concrete grasp on his story beats, but he has always represented self-doubt. A lot of the other characters are very sure of themselves, and they make decisions that comport with that. But Jin has always had the internal conflict of the devil. While other characters like Reina, Kazuya, and Kazumi welcome the devil as a feature of themselves, Jin has always felt dissonant. It's made him retreat inside of himself, hate himself, and lash out at others. However, in Tekken 8, the solution is just believe in yourself, smile. It sucks balls, the story fucking sucks. The closest that we got to cool introspection for this character to do was the few short chapters that we spent inside of his mind. However, I find a lot of this to be underbaked and not fully explored upon review. Like, this could have been really, really good. It could have been Jin making a full turnaround for himself and acknowledging what he did and how that was wrong and the implications of what happened, and people being mad at him and still being mad and him having to take accountability. But none of that happened. Everyone just immediately forgave him, and he had 2 arguments with himself in his head, and then he was like, actually, guys, I am pretty awesome. I know that in the post-credit scenes there are images of Zafina and Claudio post-death being alive and stuff, and Tekken cannot commit to a character dying. But I would actually like to see these 2 characters dead. First, I think that they've served their time narratively and gameplay-wise, and second, having 2 characters that can just get rid of the devil's powers is quite the issue. I think that's why they killed them off originally. A lot of the tension is cut down when they could just cast a spell and stop the entire conflict. They were underutilized in the story for that exact reason, making their inclusions useless or overpowered. There's so much more that they could have done with these characters, but I'm begging for a time jump to hopefully put some life back into this narrative. And that can't happen if we continue to follow this exorcist astrologer duo. There isn't much to say about Reina outside of what I've already said during the story DLC review segment, so I'll give you a TLDR. She does nothing during the story mode, she does nothing during the expansion, all of her characterization is either boring or confusing, she's not interesting to me, and I think that if she's interesting to you, the parts that you like about her are not found within the story mode. Alright, I wanted to add a little addendum because I felt like I did the Reina mains bad here. What I meant by that last line was just that if you like Reina, I think you like her because of how she is in-game. Her voice lines, her animations, even the way she fights are all very charismatic. You can tell that the dev team put a lot of time into her and thinking about how she would appear when fighting. However, in the story, she doesn't really do anything. It's more interesting to interact with the hypotheticals of who this character could be. Who is she in relation to Jin, Kazuya, and Heihachi? However, none of these questions are answered in either of the story modes. So it makes her fall flat largely as a character. There's not much intrigue behind her. From her reveal, it was painfully obvious to see that she was a Mishima, and while we did find out that she's a Hachijo, it just shifts it from her being Heihachi's daughter to Heihachi's adoptive daughter, which we already did with Lee. So like, she's his daughter, and we learned nothing, we gained nothing from the story mode. Okay, I hope I clarified that, because I sounded a little bit mean. Jun Kazama. Jun was the first character that I picked in Tekken 2, I played her in Tag 1, and decades later I played her in Tag 2. And this might be the game that ruined Jun Kazama for me. Maybe ruined is strong, I'm still enamored by aspects of her and her gameplay, but never have the issues with her character been more apparent. She simply is just an unfinished concept of the motherly figure trope. This is exemplified by the fact that she has no speaking lines in the story. Let me reemphasize that. She has no speaking lines in the story. We've waited 10 years to play this character again and see where she's been, and she had no lines. And you may be screaming into your electronic device right now, she talks to Jin in the story mode, but this is a memory Jin is speaking to. It's not actually her. They don't even have a substantive conversation about anything. Jin just goes, I'm losing, and Jun responds, you're my son, I love you, and then Jin wins. This kind of reminds me of, spoiler alert, Volume 9 of RWBY, when the main character is at the end of her rope, and the thing that pulls her away from the edge is her mom saying, I love you. It's so fucking lazy and boring, and it highlights the tropiness of this character. She's not interesting, she's not a foil to Kazuya, she's not even a character, and it's really disappointing as a long-time fan of Jun Kazama. We do actually get an answer as to where she's been this whole time. She's been taking a nap. She's literally been asleep while all of this is happening. During the events of Tekken 3, Tekken 4, 5, 6, and 7, she was sleeping. Unconscionable writing. You had 20 years to come up with an answer to where this main character of this series has been, and she's been taking a nap? She has a bird come to her to wake her up when it's the right time to intervene between Jin and Kazuya. But wasn't a more pressing time during the events of Tekken 4, when Kazuya was thought to be dead? Or in between the events of Tekken 5 and 6, when Jin was preparing an all-out war actively trying to summon the origin of the Devil Gene? Or Tekken 7, when Jin was in a coma and Kazuya was being threatened by an interdimensional demon? Okay, there's some other stuff I wanted to complain about, but it wasn't necessarily large enough to have its own section, so I'll just talk about them here in like a speed round. Holy contrivances. This includes stuff like Jin just suddenly taking a nap in the middle of the story. Jun also taking a nap, it must be hereditary. Kazuya somehow immediately knowing where Jin is in chapter 10. There's also established character relationships that are just like not acknowledged. Lars, Elisa, and Xiaoyu never interact. Kuma and Paul take forever to acknowledge each other. Brian and Yoshi interact and fight once, but that's during the tournament arc. The King of Iron Fist tournament actually only lasts for one chapter. Also, during these big group fights, everyone is just standing around. I'm sure that they would have won a lot of these altercations if they maybe fought together. There's also a lot of trailer bait since none of the things hinted at in the intro ever happen. Like Ogre, for example, where the fuck is he? Azazel is only used for one chapter and then is discarded and completely useless. This was also branded as the end of the Mishima saga. It doesn't look like the end to me. There is neither soft nor hard magic, things just happen. Like Ogre isn't really explained as to how he exists. There's devils, but now there's also angels. There's also evil spirits, and there's cyborgs, and there's space ninjas. And none of these things are explained as to how they can all exist together, and they're so frequently retconned that it's difficult to try to even make or understand a magic system for this game. There's also a lot of pacing issues, like nothing happens for the first 5 chapters, and then everything happens at once. I've mentioned this a few times, but the power scaling, like how did Reina fight Kazuya in chapter 7? How did Ling take on 9 Jack 7s by herself in chapter 9? But Elisa in chapter 10 cannot beat 1 Jack 8? But none of this is new. I think since Tekken 5, the community has noticed a slow or immediately drastic decline in the quality of the story, which is unfortunate. I think that there's a lot of narrative and story beats that are very interesting, like how I brought up with Kazuya and Jin before. There could be other characters that are fleshed out to complement some of these moral questions that are asked within the game. But instead, it's just been weird retconning of things that were already pre-established in previous games. It's been horrible writing and unclear character motivations. It's been piss poor pacing and awful power scaling that takes you directly out of the story. It's becoming increasingly more difficult to defend it, honestly. But I love it. Alas, I'm a fucking idiot. I love it. That's why I make this video, because I would like for it to be good. I would really like for it to be good. But I would like to hear y'all's thoughts. One thing about the Tekken community is that we will never shut the fuck up. So I know that a lot of people have a lot of unique and interesting ideas and thoughts about this narrative and about where the story can go beyond this point. Hi guys, I actually just finished recording all my lines for this video. Oh my gosh. I promised that I was going to make this like a week ago, but it ended up being a much more daunting task than I imagined. I'm sure that you can see by the runtime. But I'm really passionate about this, and I've wanted to make this since the game came out. But I was waiting for the story mode DLC because I was like, oh, maybe it'll help. Y'all, it did not help. It might have made it worse. It honestly might have made it worse. But I think that there's clear things that they can do to help improve this story that they're just like not doing. So, but I hope that y'all were able to find some form of enjoyment out of this. This is my first like long form video essay. I think I would like to do more stuff like this because honestly I haven't been playing the game that much, but I do love to just think and pontificate about stuff, and the game is one of those things. I don't know how to end this because this has been such a daunting task, but I really hope that y'all enjoyed. I will see y'all in my next video. Subscribe, like, y'all know all the things. Y'all know all the things. But bye!